Drones have been around for quite some time now. They have been put to use in various ways. As they can act as our eyes in the sky, they enable us to see things from previously unreachable and unachievable perspectives. Today, we look at those cases in which a more or less casual drone flight managed to capture something that no one could have expected. 1. A hole in a lake. Flying over a beautiful lake, this drone discovers a gaping hole in the midst of it, sucking water in. The surprised drone pilot decides to do his own research and understand what such a physics-defying occurrence means, what it's used for, and most interestingly, what the insides of it look like. To disperse anyone who thought there might be a villain riding a disc flying out of this hole, we should start by mentioning that this isn't something that just happened, but was cleverly planned to keep people safe. The lake that this hole is built in the middle of is called Lake Berryessa, and it represents a gathering of water that resulted from building a dam called Monticello Dam. This fantastic construction connects two sides of a mountain, stopping an enormous amount of water, which instead of drowning those nearby, is used to generate electricity. Standing tall at 304 feet or 92 meters, this construction has kept the lights on for over 60 years. The tricky thing about creating a lake by stopping a river flow and making water gather is not to overdo it. A subtle balance is needed to keep the dam functional. This usually doesn't represent a challenge as long as the amount of water is accounted for. But what happens when an unexpected amount of water shows up directly from the sky in the form of rainfall over the flow of incoming water is increased? The explanation for the surprising hole in this lake lies in the answer to this question. Due to the lack of space to build an overflowing system that goes directly over the dam, a solution was sought, building a tunnel that would lead the water away from below. This eye-catching occurrence is the Morning Glory Spillway, which the locals have jokingly named the Glory Hole. To explain its purpose, we can simply imagine unplugging a drain to release excess water. However, in this case, there's no need for any unplugging. Drainage starts as soon as the water level rises above the level of the spillway's opening. While up until now, we have had the chance to see how amazing and almost sci-fi-like this spillway looks when the water level shows us its purpose of a drain. This isn't too common of an occurrence. Thanks to the teams who keep a close eye on the water levels and manage these, the most efficiently produce electricity, the Morning Glory Spillway, is relied on only when necessary. But let's see how it looks when there's nothing going on, except maybe a camera is equipped with the drone. We should maybe start by addressing a simple question that may pop up in one's mind. Yes, it occasionally happens that animals, usually birds, end up going into the drain hole, and no, they usually don't get hurt. Luckily, those species that inhabit the surrounding area have had enough time to learn that jumping head-on into the unknown abyss may not be the brightest idea. Nevertheless, let us try and imagine what one would live through if they were to be drawn in. Right from the start, we can realize that not much light can make it through this deep hole. This means that not only wouldn't people have an awareness of where exactly they are or where they're going, but they wouldn't be able to see a thing. Naturally, since a lot of water goes through and gets dried out through this tunnel, we can see calcium buildup alongside its wall. These lines perfectly show us the way through the tunnel following along. What one doesn't expect to see here is a light on the other side of the tunnel. Even though we wouldn't usually suggest one to follow the light, in this case, it seems to make sense. At the bottom of this tunnel, we also see that people have had the chance to apply their creativity and create graffiti, hopefully thinking about their safety first as they're in such a dangerous place. As it's nearing the end of this tunnel/drain, this handy drone shows us that all the water from the lake goes into the river, which flows right down below. 2. A hole in the ground. We have seen what one may find when they send a drone down a hole. This next stunning discovery was made by amateur archaeologists exploring the Gran Canaria island. Using their drone, this group noticed something interesting that triggered their curiosity. Setting their minds to unravel this mystery, they unveiled a tomb containing ancient remains of a long-lost pre-Hispanic civilization. Relying on footage from a tough-to-reach angle from the air, this group of archaeologists made a discovery that will certainly put their names up in the archaeological community. As we may wonder what caught the archaeologists' attention, we turn to Ayos Hima Gonzalez, who was part of the crew that discovered the ancient tomb. even though he and his team had to keep this a secret at the beginning to avoid vandals getting to their discovery. He later shared that they were trying intentionally to catch a look from another angle, which was physically tough to reach as it required climbing. But that isn't even where their troubles ended, since they were met with a challenge to convince people that images made by their drone weren't fake. Considering that the story didn't turn out to be fake, let's dig in and see what they have actually discovered. The tomb that lay below the uncovered bones consisted of 72 skeletons belonging to a society called Guanche. It is believed that over time they became part of Spanish settlers and merged with their culture when the island of Gran Canaria was colonized. Although Gran Canaria is famous for many burial caves, this is quite an important one. Out of the 72 discovered mummified skeletons, 62 were adults and 10 were newborns. The latter 10 were especially important, as scientists are constantly trying to grab hold of any data that may provide a window into history. The importance of 10 newborn skeletons is heightened by the fact that there are no previous similar discoveries. The burial shrouds were made with what was available at the time, various parts of vegetables and animal skins. This shows that this tomb could have resulted from some form of burial ceremony that has left these bodies 75 feet or 23 meters below ground. 3. An old plane navigation system. As we have seen, drones have helped us discover various mysteries of the world. They can even help us uncover some of the history that's left behind by previous generations and technologies. One of these may be as simple as concrete arrows spreading across America. Some of the technology that we may take for granted nowadays wasn't available as nearly as 20 or 30 years ago. Online maps and similar available navigational systems widespread today weren't an option back in the day. Instead, navigation had to be done manually or by using specific systems. We take a look at an interesting one that many drones have come across and discovered, as they are not always easy to spot from land. We may have even walked over one of these symbols and been unaware of it. Between the two world wars, the American Postal Service had an idea that, from today's viewpoint, may seem as if it's straight out of fairy tales, but it was still quite effective. They decided to mark the Earth itself with many symbols which could be seen from the skies. Back in 1924, the government decided to build the symbol across all postal delivery routes. The premise of the idea was quite simple. Let's create big enough yellow painted arrows every 10 miles and stick a pole with a light next to them to draw the attention of those flying above them even better. It's interesting to picture someone using a plane to deliver someone's post, all while looking at the land to spot these giant markings. Imagine if such a task were to fall on today's delivery services. Not long after this idea was conceived and set up, technology reached the discovery of radio, and its use made the reliance on these giant markings on the ground obsolete. They now remain an interesting reminder of our advancement. Interestingly enough, if one were to arm themselves with patience and play, connect the dots with these arrows, we would essentially get a map of the entire system of paths the old postal service used. 4. Smugglers Cave. Let's find out what other rocky delights drones may uncover for us. This tiny fortress that is placed in the middle of a rocky crack is named Calaver Hole. It is a site that many hiking enthusiasts prefer to check out, and as such, it has become a popular visiting spot. However, according to a legend associated with it, it could be less friendly for visitors than it appears to be today. Namely, it's believed to have been used by a pirate who relied on this safe space to store his wealth and goods. The pirate's name was John Lucas, and back in the day, he was a notorious smuggler who lived nearby in a fortified mansion. Because of this, it's also called a Smugglers Cave. This fine establishment is 60 feet or 18 meters tall, and it has been around since the 13th century. Nowadays, reminding less of the ancient times, it even has parking available for curious visitors to enjoy. As we dig somewhat deeper, we may discover that being a pirate's hiding place is somewhat of a legend and a secondary use for this rocky fortress. Instead, it was intended to be a place to breed and house pigeons. Don't be fooled by this idea, which seems like a cute hobby. In the Middle Ages, pigeons were seen as quite a common species to rely on for food. This is due to their abundance and how quickly they breed. Thanks to this, they were a plentiful source of food back in the Middle Ages. As one enters this cave-like space, we realize why it may seem suitable to hide goods here. Even though we may have a hard time wrapping our heads around the placement of these windows and may have some ideas regarding the interior, the walls are entirely riddled with holes for pigeons to breed and live in. What better place to hide things we don't want anyone to reach for than in a cave filled with numerous holes full of pigeons? 5. Kapilakaya Rock Tomb. Another secret that resides within the walls of a stone is the Kapilakaya Rock Tomb. This site is not as well hidden as the previous one, but isn't enrolled in any less mystery. Even though it is placed in open sight, drone footage may make it seem easy to reach, which isn't necessarily the case. This tomb is thought to be from the 2nd century BC. Its purpose and origin are a theme of various debates. This amazing rocky site resides in Turkey, which is why some believe it may be Roman, considering the timeline. Today, we see it even covered with graffiti the unrespectful vandals have left behind. Consider how magical this site would have seemed to someone who simply stumbled upon this giant door-looking entrance. Since we have explored it inside out, we discovered everything there is to know about it except its meaning. We now know that the giant door is just an illusion covering for a smaller crypt that is reachable only through a 3.3-foot or 1 meter square opening in the middle of it. We could have thought that Inception was a new idea when someone was even so far back in history covering a smaller door in the middle of a bigger one. If we were to squeeze through this opening and enter the hidden script, what we would find inside would reveal a path into the mountain leading to the other end of it. Even though the world's eyes are focused on this interesting and exaggerated fake door, we haven't as of yet successfully discovered the meaning of the inscriptions that are found on them. If you want to give it a shot yourself, consider what letters IKEZIOS could mean. Even though yet unexplained, some trust this could be the name of a Roman commander. 6. Mount Rushmore. We could move on to look into another monumental and maybe better known place that also hides a mysterious secret door, or in this case, a chamber. To understand the purpose of such a chamber, one needs to look at the past and consider the future. Let us dive right in and see what this means. What better way to ensure your entry into history's records than by sculpting your entire face in a giant rock? If this idea weren't true, we may consider it a fantasy. South Dakota's Black Hills offer an amazing sight on Mount Rushmore. Looking at the faces of American presidents, one could wonder, if someone wanted to show you their face, why would they pace a hidden room right behind their neck? The construction of the monumental faces began in 1927. At that time, someone had to have considered the idea of placing this unusual room in such an unexpected place. However, its purpose may be less scheming than generous. Behind the Abraham Lincoln figure, there is a giant room. Another part of the plan was a gold-plated eagle 38 feet or 11.5 meters wide. While this may seem like a secret chamber from one of the fantasy movies, it was actually envisioned as a room to store and keep all the valuable knowledge that future generations may need, but also to put a pin on important declarations and documents such as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Even though such an idea was thrown out there, the construction was forced to prioritize and focus solely on the faces, which wasn't easy or unchallenging. Interestingly enough, this room may represent another grand tribute. The man who started building the faces, Gutzon Borglum, initiated the idea of creating a bank of knowledge to keep the fire going. Even though he didn't find support for this idea and unfortunately passed away before the construction was finished, his son took over and saw it to completion. In more recent history, not too long ago, this idea was reawakened and pushed forward. The chamber has now become a time capsule containing, at least in essence, the grand idea and purpose for which it was built. It now harbors a titanium vault filled with various portraits showing different aspects of American history, to pay tribute to the kind mind behind such a hopeful and pleasant message for future generations. The biography and a portrait of Borglum are also placed there. Even though what seems like a secret chamber nowadays isn't kept as such, reaching it is quite challenging as it requires climbing up an 800-foot or 244-meter-long staircase track. Furthermore, even if one were to reach it, its purpose would be fixed for future generations to see and not for the visitors of today. 7. Katsky Pillar. The previous idea we have seen has ended up as a tribute to a great idea and a great man behind it. In our next example, we look at how people did their best to climb the rocky terrain to get closer to heaven. Imagine taking an interesting hike in somewhat rural areas of Georgia when you stumble upon a giant pillar. To make the surprisingly straight shape more interesting, at the top, you notice an object looking like a house. While you may think that it's the loudest and clearest message spelling, "I don't want to be bothered by anyone," this tower has more of a story to it. Namely, on top of this huge limestone column lies nested on top of it an Orthodox church. The objects on it lie at an astonishing height of 130 feet or 40 meters. The relatively modern look of the church's objects atop the Katsky Pillar shouldn't trick one into thinking that it's easy to reach them. The only available way up is a steel ladder that one can notice doesn't look as if it's up to any modern safety standard. Not only that, but only monks who take on pilgrimage or their journey to this sacred place are allowed to go up there. But when and how did this place come to be? It turns out to be even more mysterious. As it's considered one of the most sacred places on Earth, we can imagine that it has always been closely kept an eye on. Various religious practices and lifestyles that go along with it are sewn into the very surroundings and footing of this place. Without surprise, when something is considered so precious, it isn't always available to the rest of the world. And so was the case with Katsky Pillar as well. This is why not many have had the chance to get up there or to capture what can be seen there. This changed for the first time in 1944 when a Georgian writer was honored with an opportunity to climb up. Imagine how closed off this place was when this first contact allowed the world to readjust and correct its beliefs by recognizing that this place wasn't built between the 4th and 5th as previously believed. Instead, it was discovered that it was built between the 9th and the 10th centuries, honoring the name Maximus the Confessor, who was a monk who lived in the 7th century. Since then, there have been various monks who have lived atop the sacred pillar. Let us move on to the next story with the thought that these monks rely on those frightening metal ladders to go up and down on a daily basis. It takes them about 20 minutes to reach the door. 8. Maijishan Grottos. It would appear that drones, rocks, and other high-up places go well together. Some drone-discovered sites don't have to be on top of a hill. Instead, they could be built right into one. Maijishan Grottos is a group of nearly 200 caves that form a very complex system. As we have learned, those caves have been drilled into the side of a giant hill, which is found to exceed 460 feet or 140 meters in height. Similarly to the place we previously saw, it is covered by a religious theme, and it was also only contacted by the outside world near the 1950s by a team of Chinese archaeologists from Beijing. This majestic place is located in northwest China in Gansu province. As one can see, it has a gorgeous and unique color that holds somewhat of a mystery to it. Namely, this amazing color the Maijishan Grottos owes to the red sandstone it is made of. While the mystery of color is not a great one, the question of its origin is since the sandstone used here isn't indigenous to the location and its origin is unknown. This is also the case with the many statues present whose origin and means are less clear. However, the greatest mystery doesn't only come from how they were made, but also from how they were brought and placed in the caves. We can recognize the Buddhist grottos present at this place as just one of many that could be found in the area of northwest China. To outline the significance of this idea, it could show how the culture was both preserved and spreading. Looking at it now, we can notice that similar grottos can be found on the most important routes that represent a connection between China and Central Asia. To convey the idea of how religious this place is, we could mention that it contains over 7,200 Buddhist sculptures. The size of these varies significantly, commonly ranging from 4 inches to nearly 50 feet, or put differently, from 10 centimeters to 15 meters. The place is also covered by an amazing number of murals, covering a great proportion of the walls. Even though this miraculous place has well withstood the passage of time, humanity has decided to show it its due respect. While climate factors are affecting its walls and sculptures, and some cracks are slowly starting to appear, we were luckily aware of this place's importance, as it was placed under UNESCO protection in 2014 as a great monument of culture and history. 9. Congo Gold Rush. Thinking about valuable things worth protecting, quite recently, there was a huge uproar in Congo, Africa. The discovery that happened there could be said to have struck gold. This time, an aerial view may show us the barren fields that are left behind in the effort of countless people hoping to find a piece of gold for themselves. In this sudden rush, anything that was available was used for digging. Besides various tools and shovels that could be seen, some resorted to even using their hands, if need be. A gold fever of the new age is how one could explain what happened, privy to this outburst of interest in gold digging. Namely, a golden ore was found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. As with any grand opportunity, such as finding gold, this has drawn numerous people from all around to join and see whether luck will show them to be the favored ones. Who can blame the unsuspecting citizens from nearby villages when a chance to find gold is thrown at their feet? What's worse, it was lying hidden right under their noses, even though it's later recognized as an enormous mountain filled with gold. The intense rush created some tension, sifting through the earth to check whether the gold was unsafe to perform right on the site. Instead, those living nearby resumed picking up the earth and leaving for their homes, hopeful that the exact pile that they chose to dig from would carry a bright future. Videos have also shown us that this wasn't just a rush with no merit to it, as there are cases of those who found an abundance of valuable gold. The gold rush eventually had to be put under control before it caused serious issues. For this to happen, the authorities had to be included and put a ban on mining activities. 10. Seed Vault. Since we have had a chance through time to discover how quickly things can escalate, as we could have seen in the last example, humanity had an idea of protecting what's truly valuable. In this case, value doesn't lie in gold, but in all the various types of seeds that Earth has to offer. Somewhere between Norway and the North Pole, on a deserted island, humanity has decided to build a really important freezer. Its task is to keep the samples of all the known seeds, just in case. This vault has the capacity to hold nearly 5 million samples of various types of seeds, and right now its capacity is nearly 25% full. Even though it might be frightening to think of what it could be that we are actually preparing for, we should remember that it's just a way to make sure that an outburst of any sort of crop disease or change in, we would be ensured to have a backup. As we have had a chance to move all across the earth, we have seen many wonderful and mysterious places that surround us. Numerous cultures, religions, and styles of life have found their place and an opportunity to grow, be it on the top of a rocky pillar or inside a freezing bolt, protecting humanity's reserve of seed. Such wondrous sights may inspire hope and leave us amazed by sights we previously never knew existed. As long as we keep this wandering spirit and mindset, we are sure to stumble upon new discoveries. Today, we had a chance to see some of them.